The lecture hall was vast, with walls made of smooth stone and metal. Light glowed softly from crystal panels above. Hundreds of alien students filled the seats, their eyes fixed on the tall figure standing at the front. Professor Kareth was known across the stars. His words carried weight, and his knowledge was considered absolute. He was a scholar of predator species, a master of survival history, and a voice of authority on intergalactic biology. When he spoke, entire civilizations listened. His form was lean but powerful, with scales that shimmered a dull bronze under the light. His eyes were sharp, unblinking, and his voice was calm yet commanding. Every sentence was delivered with precision. No one doubted him. "Remember this truth," the professor said, his deep voice echoing across the chamber. "Apex predators cannot live in peace. They cannot be friends. They cannot build trust. Their nature is to fight, to compete, and to kill." The audience stirred, murmurs of agreement passing between the students. They were young, eager, and filled with respect for the alien elder before them. Professor Kareth raised a clawed hand, silencing the whispers. "It is not cruelty. It is not hatred. It is instinct. It is the law of nature. The strongest predator must remain alone. And when two meet, one will always fall." His words were heavy, final, like stone dropped into still water. The lecture was not just education. It was a lesson in survival. These students were preparing for futures as explorers, soldiers, and leaders. They listened because they believed survival depended on this wisdom. The professor began to pace slowly, his claws clicking against the floor. His eyes scanned the crowd. "On my world," he said, "the predators hunted each other for dominance. They did not share. They did not forgive. They fought until only one survived. This is the way of all apex hunters. It has always been so. It will always be so." He paused, letting silence settle. "This is why predator species cannot form lasting bonds. This is why peace among them is impossible." The students nodded, their faces serious. Some scribbled notes on glowing tablets. Others whispered admiration. To them, it was truth carved in stone. But in the back row, a human sat quietly. He was not tall, not imposing, not covered in armor or scales. He looked ordinary compared to the creatures around him. His hair was short, his clothes simple. Yet there was something in his eyes, something steady, calm, and almost amused. The professor continued his lecture, describing examples from alien worlds. Rival predators tearing ecosystems apart, great beasts destroying entire species in their hunger for dominance, civilizations lost because their apex hunters could not cooperate. Each story was more brutal than the last. The room listened in awe. This was history. This was science. This was truth. Then the professor stopped and faced the students once more. "And so," he declared, "when you meet a predator among the stars, do not look for peace. Do not look for friendship. Prepare for battle, for that is the only path. Apex predators cannot be friends." The hall fell into silence. The words hung heavy in the air. No one dared to challenge him. No one except a hand rose from the back. The professor blinked, surprised. Few ever interrupted him. His eyes narrowed, focusing on a lone human who had dared to break the silence. The human smiled lightly, his voice steady but soft. "Professor," he said, "you've never met my dog." The words were simple, but they cut through the silence like a blade. The hall filled with shocked whispers. Students of many species turned their heads, eyes wide, mandibles clicking, feathers rustling. Professor Kareth stood still, his sharp eyes locked on the human. For a moment, the room seemed frozen in time. "What?" the professor said slowly. "Did you just say?" The human leaned forward, his calm expression unchanged. "You said predators can't be friends, that they always fight until one is dead. But that is not true for us. Humans live with predators. We call them dogs. A hush fell again. It was as if the air itself had grown heavy. The professor's brow furrowed. The students shifted, unsure if they had just witnessed brilliance or madness. The human continued, still calm, almost casual. My ancestors walked with wolves. They should have been enemies. Yet, instead of killing each other, we became partners. Over time, wolves became dogs. And now, dogs are not just animals to us. They are family. They fight beside us. They guard our homes. They share our food. They even die for us. Gasps and murmurs spread like fire. Some laughed nervously. Others shook their heads, whispering disbelief. Professor Careth's jaw tightened. His voice dropped, colder now. You claim that two predators, human and beast, live together in peace? The human nodded. Yes, not only in peace, in loyalty, in love. The words echoed through the chamber, a challenge to the very foundation of Professor's lecture. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with tension, disbelief, and the first spark of something else, curiosity. The professor's eyes narrowed further. He did not like being challenged. Yet, deep within, something shifted. Doubt? Fear? Fascination? The hall waited. The game had changed. The lecture had just become something far more dangerous. And it all began with one human and one dog. The silence in the hall stretched long after the human's words. The alien students shifted nervously, their gazes darting between the human and professor. Never before had someone spoken so directly against Professor Careth. His authority was rarely challenged, and when it was, challengers did not last long. Careth's eyes narrowed, bronze scales along his neck tightening. His claws tapped against the lectern, sharp and deliberate. You dare suggest, he said slowly, that nature itself bends for your kind? That predators who should tear at each other's throats instead share food and trust? The human did not shrink under the stare. He leaned back in his seat, calm and steady. I don't suggest it, Professor. I state it. It is fact. My people have lived with predators for thousands of years. Dogs are proof of it. A ripple of sound passed through the audience. Hisses, clicks, whispers, and laughter. Some alien students thought the human was a fool. Others leaned forward, curious despite themselves. Professor Careth straightened, his tall form casting a shadow across the hall. His voice grew louder, sharper. Nonsense. Apex predators cannot share ground. They compete until one dominates or dies. This is the law of all worlds. The human tilted his head, a faint smile on his lips. Maybe it is the law of your world, Professor, but it is not the law of mine. The hall stirred again, tension rising like heat. The professor's eyes glared like burning coals. Explain yourself, he demanded. Explain how two predators can look upon each other and not see an enemy. The human rose from his seat. His movements were slow, unhurried, as though he had all the time in the galaxy. He stepped into the aisle, the eyes of hundreds following him. He spoke clearly, his voice calm, almost gentle. Long ago, on Earth, humans were hunters. Wolves were hunters too. We should have been rivals. We should have fought. But something different happened. Some wolves came closer, searching for scraps of food. Humans let them stay. We both learned. We shared. And over time, those wolves became our partners. They became dogs. The professor hissed, unimpressed. Partners? Animals are not partners. They are tools, or prey, or threats. The human's eyes flickered with quiet amusement. Dogs are not tools. They are not prey. They are family. They hunt beside us. They guard our children. They die to protect us. And we die to protect them. The word struck the audience like thunder. Aliens gasped, some recoiling in disbelief. To them, predators were creatures of terror and death, never friends, never family. The idea seemed impossible, even insane. The professor leaned forward, claws gripping the lectern. His voice was harsh, biting. If what you say is true, then it is unnatural. It is dangerous. Predators do not share trust. They cannot. The human met his gaze without flinching. Maybe that is why humans are different. The hall fell silent once more. The statement was bold, heavy with challenge. Students shifted uneasily in their seats, sensing the growing storm. Professor Kareth growled, his voice low. "And you think this dog proves your kind can break the law of nature?" "Yes," the human said simply. "My dog proves predators can be more than killers. My dog proves friendship is stronger than fear." The hall erupted in noise, arguments, disbelief, mocking laughter. Some students shouted that it was impossible. Others whispered that perhaps the human spoke truth. The tension grew thick, a storm of clashing voices. The professor raised his clawed hand, and the room fell silent once more. His eyes never left the human. "Very well," he said coldly. "You claim friendship where there should be blood. Then show us. Convince us." The human stood tall, unshaken. His calm smile remained. "I will," he said. Professor Kareth's tone sharpened. "But know this, human. If your claim fails, if your story is a lie, you will not only shame yourself, you will shame your entire species. Do you understand?" The human nodded without hesitation. "I understand." The professor studied him, searching for fear. But the human's eyes remained steady, unyielding. "Then speak," the professor ordered. "Tell us your proof. Tell us why we should believe this impossible bond." The human stepped forward, standing in the center of the hall. The alien students leaned closer, eyes wide, ears twitching, mandibles clicking. The atmosphere was electric, filled with suspense. He drew a slow breath, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I will tell you about the first wolves that walked beside humans. I will tell you how enemies became partners, how fear became trust, and how trust became love. And when I am finished, you will see that your law of nature is not the only law that exists." The professor said nothing, but his eyes burned with intensity. The challenge had begun. The hall was no longer a classroom. It was an arena. One human stood against centuries of alien knowledge. The weight of an entire species hung on his words. And still the human smiled. The hall was silent, yet charged with restless energy. Alien students leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide, waiting for the strange human to explain. Professor Kareth stood rigid, his bronze scales catching the light, his gaze sharp and unforgiving. This was no longer a simple lecture. It was now a battle of ideas. The human stood tall in the center of the chamber. His voice was steady, clear, and calm. "You say predators cannot be friends," he began. "You say they will always fight until one is gone. But my people learned something different. We learned that survival is not always about killing. Sometimes survival is about trust." A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. To these alien cadets, trust between predators was an alien thought. Yet the human continued without pause. "Thousands of years ago," he said, "my ancestors lived as hunters. They were strong, but the world was harsher still. Winter brought cold and hunger. Prey was scarce. And in those dark days, humans were not alone. Wolves followed us. They were predators too, fast and fierce. We should have been enemies." The professor scoffed, but the human pressed on. "One night," the human said, lowering his tone so the crowd leaned closer, "a wolf came near a human camp. The people could have killed it. Instead, they threw it food. The wolf left. But it came back again the next night, and the night after that. Slowly, humans and wolves began to watch each other. We learned their ways. They learned ours. The students shifted in their seats, caught in the strange image. The human's voice carried a quiet rhythm, like a storyteller weaving a spell. At first, it was small things, he said. The wolves warned us when other predators came. They barked, they growled, and our people lived because of it. We, in turn, gave them scraps, warmth, shelter. Over time, the wolves changed. They grew closer, gentler. They became dogs. The professor's eyes narrowed. You claim, he said slowly, that your ancestors tamed killers with kindness? The human smiled faintly. Not just tamed. We shared life. We shared danger. We shared loyalty. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he lifted a small device from his belt. With a touch, a hollow image sprang to life. Gasps filled the chamber. It was a moving picture, glowing in the air. It showed a man in a burning building, coughing, choking on smoke. And through the flames came a dog, dragging him by the arm, pulling him towards safety. The man collapsed outside, alive only because of the animal. The hall stirred. Some students whispered disbelief. Others sat frozen, unable to look away. The human touched the device again, and a second image appeared. This time it was a battlefield. Soldiers crouched behind barriers, blaster fire streaking across the sky. Beside them, dogs stood unflinching, waiting for orders. One dog ran forward, carrying equipment, even as danger rained down around it. They do not just live with us, the human said softly. They fight with us. They protect us. They bleed for us. A sharp hiss broke the silence. One alien student rose, her scales trembling. Lies, she spat. Predators do not give their lives for others. They kill for themselves, always for themselves. The human turned his gaze toward her. His voice remained calm, almost gentle. Perhaps on your world, but not on mine. The professor slammed a clawed hand on the lectern. The sound cracked through the air like thunder. You speak of rare accidents. Anomalies. Animals act on instinct, nothing more. Do not mistake instinct for loyalty. The human's eyes darkened slightly, though his calm smile remained. Then how do you explain this? Another hollow image appeared. This time, it showed a child, small, fragile, walking near a wild beast that prowled in the shadows. The dog stood between them, snarling, ready to give its life. The beast fled. The child lived. The audience gasped again. Even the professor's expression flickered. Just for a moment, the human's voice grew firmer. Instinct is survival. Instinct is self. But loyalty is sacrifice. My dog would die to protect me, and I would die to protect him. That is not instinct. That is trust. That is love. The words rang through the hall. The alien cadets were silent now, caught between disbelief and awe. None had ever heard predators spoken of in this way. None had imagined such a bond was possible. The professor's claws gripped the lectern tight. His voice was low, dangerous. You speak of love between killers. You speak of bonds that defy the universe itself. If it is true, he stopped. His eyes narrowed, sharp as blades. If it is true, he said at last, then humans are far more dangerous than we believed. For any species that can befriend an apex predator must be greater still. The hall shifted uneasily, whispers rising like waves. Fear rippled through the room. What kind of beings were humans, if even predators bent to their will? The human stood calm, unshaken. His gaze was steady, his voice clear. Dangerous, yes, but not because we kill, because we choose when not to. The silence that followed was deeper than before. The alien student stared at the human, as if seeing him for the first time. The professor's eyes burned with something darker than anger, something closer to fear. The challenge was no longer a debate. It was a revelation, and it had only just begun. The hollow images faded, leaving the hall in uneasy silence. Alien students shifted in their seats, their thoughts torn between disbelief and fascination. Many had never questioned the law of predators. To them, it was unshakable. Yet here was a human, calmly shattering it with stories and proof. Professor Caress stood unmoving, his claws gripping the lectern so tightly the metal bent under his strength. His eyes glowed with sharp fire, but his voice, when it came, was cold and precise. "You tell stories," he said. "Stories of beasts who fight for you. You show pictures. But stories are not truth. Pictures are not proof. Nature does not change because a human speaks soft words." The crowd stirred, some nodding in agreement. Caratha's voice carried the weight of authority. He was the galaxy's most respected scholar on predator behavior. His word had always been final. The human remained calm, standing in the center of the hall. His hands were clasped loosely behind his back. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes never wavered. The professor leaned forward. "Do you know what predators did on my world? They did not share trust. They did not share food. They killed each other until only the strongest remained. My people were forced to rise above them, to hunt them, to kill them, or we would not exist today." He raised his voice, letting it echo through the chamber. "That is the law of predators. That is the law written in blood, in survival. One kills. The other dies. There is no room for trust." The audience hissed and murmured, emboldened by the professor's words. Several students shouted their approval, calling out their own world stories. Beasts that tore apart villages, predators that devoured entire tribes, creatures that fought until nothing remained. Caress spread his arms wide, commanding silence once more. "You claim friendship with killers. You claim loyalty from beasts. But loyalty is an illusion. It is only fear and dependence. Remove the scraps of food, remove the shelter, and your dog will turn on you. That is the truth. That is the law of nature." He fixed his gaze on the human, his voice lowering into a dangerous growl. "And if you deny this, then you are not only a fool, you are a liar." The hall erupted with noise. Students shouted over one another, some cheering professor's words, others whispering doubt. The tension in the air was heavy, like a storm ready to break. But the human did not flinch. He waited for the voices to fade. When silence returned, he spoke with quiet strength. "You say loyalty is an illusion," he said. "You say trust is weakness. But I have lived with it. I have seen it. My dog does not stay because of scraps. He stays because he chooses to. He stays because I am his family. And I stay because he is mine." Caratha's claws scraped against the lectern. "Sentiment," he spat. "Weakness. Your words are soaked in emotion, not reason. Do you think predators care for emotion? They are hunger given form. They are teeth and claws. They are survival. Nothing more." The human's eyes narrowed, his voice still calm but firmer now. "Maybe that is what you see, Professor. But what I see is different. I see a predator who would starve before letting harm touch my child. I see a predator who fights not for himself, but for his pack. I see loyalty stronger than fear, stronger than hunger." Gasps echoed again. The human's tone was steady, but every word struck like a hammer against stone. Kareth bared his teeth, his patience thinning. "You speak as if predators are noble, but they are not. They are monsters. They are death." The human tilted his head slightly, his calm smile returning. "And yet," he said softly, "my monster sleeps at the foot of my bed, and I trust him with my life." The hall froze. The simple sentence carried more weight than any speech. Even the students who mocked earlier fell silent, struggling to understand a bond they had never imagined. The professor's chest rose and fell, his breath sharp, his anger struggling against something else. Something he did not want to admit, doubt. But he could not show weakness. His voice hardened again. If this is true, then it is not love. It is control. You did not befriend your predator. You bent it to your will. You made it a servant. And that makes you far more dangerous than the beast itself. The words cut through the silence like a blade. The students murmured nervously, glancing between professor and human. The fear in their voices grew louder. If humans could control predators, what else could they control? The human's calm smile did not fade. His eyes, steady and unblinking, met the professor's gaze. Maybe you are right, Professor. Maybe we are dangerous, but not because we control predators, because we learn to befriend them. The hall grew cold with silence, every alien caught between fear and awe. Professor Carruthers' eyes burned, his claws tapping the lectern again and again, the sound sharp as thunder. The debate was no longer just about predators. It was about humanity itself. And in that hall, for the first time, the professor realized he was not only testing the human was testing him. The hall was tense, thick with fear and doubt. Professor Carruthers' words still echoed. You did not befriend your predator. You bent it to your will. And that makes you far more dangerous than the beast itself. The alien students whispered among themselves, their voices sharp and uneasy. Some hissed in agreement, convinced the professor was right. Others sat frozen, staring at the human as if he carried a secret too large for one being to hold. The human did not move. He stood in the center of the hall, hands clasped calmly behind his back. His face was steady, his voice soft but strong. You say I bent my dog into a servant, he said. You say loyalty is only control. Then let me show you something that cannot be explained by fear or by chains. Let me show you proof. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small device once more. A flicker of blue light filled the chamber as the hollow projector came to life. The first image appeared. A man lay in a hospital bed, pale and weak. Machines beeped softly at his side. At his feet sat a dog, eyes watching, never leaving him. For days, the animal had not eaten, had not left the room. It simply stayed, guarding its human, waiting. The audience murmured. Some tilted their heads. Puzzled, others shook their heads, not understanding. The human's voice explained. This dog did not stay because of food. No one fed him. He did not stay because of command. No one ordered him. He stayed because he could not leave the one he loved. He would rather starve than abandon his human. Gasps spread through the students. The idea was alien to them. Loyalty that defied survival itself. The human touched the device again. The image shifted. Now it was a battlefield, fire and smoke filling the sky. Soldiers ran for cover, blaster bolts tearing the ground around them. In the chaos, a dog leapt forward, teeth bared, attacking an enemy soldier who raised a weapon. The dog fell moments later, struck down. But his human lived. The hall grew quiet. The silence was heavier now, tinged with unease. That, the human said softly, was not control. That was a sacrifice. He knew the danger. He knew he would not return. But he chose to protect his partner. The alien cadets whispered furiously. Some looked away, unable to watch. Others leaned closer, unable to stop. The professor's jaw tightened. His claws dug into the lectern, but he did not interrupt. The human continued. You want more proof? Then look. The hollow shifted again. A child appeared this time. A little girl, small and fragile, walking near a dark forest. Shadows moved within the trees. A predator emerged, large in the child, teeth flashing. But before it could strike, a dog rushed forward, standing between the beast and the girl. The child ran. The dog did not. The hollow froze on the image of fangs, and courage locked together. The human's voice was calm, but there was steel within it. That is not fear. That is not control. That is love stronger than death. The hall was silent, utterly still. No one moved. Even Professor's voice faltered before it came, low and cold. "You show us images," he said. "Stories. Tricks. But how do we know these are true? How do we know they are not lies designed to make humans look noble?" The human did not blink, because every human in this room could tell you the same story. We all know it. It is part of who we are. We do not need to invent it. The professor's eyes narrowed. His voice sharpened. Even if true, it is not proof of friendship. It is proof that humans are masters of control, that you enslave predators so deeply they throw away their lives for you. That is not love. That is domination. The words rippled through the audience. Many nodded, clinging to the professor's explanation because it was safer than the alternative, safer than believing predators could feel love, safer than believing humans could inspire it. The human did not argue at once. He waited, letting the silence grow heavy again. Then he spoke, his tone quieter, more personal. "You think we enslave them? That we control them? Then tell me why, when my father was buried, his dog lay on his grave and would not move. Tell me why it stayed there, through rain and cold, until the day it died." The hall froze. The words hung in the air like a blade. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The human's eyes lowered for a moment, then lifted again. His voice carried the weight of memory. No command held that dog. No food called to him. He stayed because his heart told him to. That is not domination. That is devotion. The hollow flickered once more, showing a grainy image, a grave covered in flowers. At its base, a dog curled tightly, eyes closed, unmoving. The students gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others lowered their eyes. Even the professor's claws stilled against the lectern. The human let the hollow fade. The chamber was dark again, filled only with the sound of quiet breathing. "You see predators as monsters," the human said at last. "We see them as family. You see only fear. We see trust. And maybe that is why you think we are dangerous, because we are not afraid of monsters, because sometimes we love them." The silence was total. The professor's eyes burned with fury, but there was something else hidden beneath it, something he had never allowed before. Doubt. Finally, his voice broke the quiet. "If what you say is true, then humans are more dangerous than any predator I have studied. For any species that can turn killers into companions must be greater killers themselves." The words sent a chill through the hall. Students shifted nervously, their fear growing. What were humans, if even predators bent not through chains, but through love? The human's voice remained calm, but it carried an edge now. "Maybe you are right, Professor. Maybe we are dangerous, but not because we enslave. Because we choose. We choose loyalty. We choose trust. We choose love, even when it could kill us." The tension in the hall was unbearable now. Some students whispered that humans were monsters in disguise. Others whispered that perhaps they were something greater. The professor's claws gripped the lectern once more, his eyes blazing. "Then answer me this, human. If you can make friends of predators, what else can you bend to your will? What else can you make love you?" The question cut like a blade. It was not just a challenge. It was fear made flesh. The human's calm smile returned. He said nothing, and the silence that followed was louder than any words. The professor's question hung in the air like a blade. "If you can make friends of predators, what else can you bend to your will? What else can you make love you?" The hall was silent, but the silence was alive, tense, sharp, trembling with unease. The alien students stared at the human with wide eyes. Some looked afraid, others fascinated. The weight of the professor's words pressed on them like a stone. The human did not answer at once. He stood in the center of the hall, hands folded behind his back, calm as ever. His face was unreadable, his eyes steady. He did not rush, and that silence, that waiting, made the question feel even heavier. Finally, the human spoke, his voice low but clear. You ask what else we can control, what else we can make love us. But you do not understand. We did not force the wolf to stay by our fire. We did not chain him to our homes. He came because he chose to, and we chose him. It was not control. It was trust. That is the difference you cannot see. The professor hissed, his scales shifting in agitation. Trust? Between killers? Between hunters? Trust is weakness. It is a crack where death slips in. No predator trusts. They only wait for the moment to strike. The human shook his head gently. Maybe on your world, but not on mine. The students murmured, their voices rising in argument. Some shouted that the professor was right, that predators were monsters. Others whispered that perhaps the humans spoke truth, that maybe a species had done something no one else had ever managed. Kareth slammed his claw on the lectern, silencing the crowd. His voice thundered across the hall. If you speak truth, then it means this. Humanity is more dangerous than anything we have faced. A predator is to be feared, but a predator that commands other predators? That is terror itself. The room stirred. The word spread like fire through dry grass. Fear rippled across the audience. The human stood still, but inside he could feel the shift. The professor was no longer only arguing. He was afraid, and fear was far more powerful than doubt. The professor's eyes burned as he continued. On my world, predators ruled the wild. They destroyed whole tribes. They devoured the weak. We survived only by hunting them to extinction. And yet you, human, you walk beside them. You share food with them. You let them into your homes. Do you not see? It is unnatural. It is impossible. The human's voice was steady, calm against the storm. It is not unnatural. It is what makes us human. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we survive because we choose to trust. We build bonds. We create loyalty where none should exist. That is our strength. That is why the wolf became our brother instead of our enemy. The words hit the students like thunder. Some leaned forward, wide-eyed, caught in the spell of the story. Others shrank back, as if the human had revealed something too dangerous to hear. Kareth's claws scraped the lectern again and again, the sound harsh and sharp. His voice dropped low, almost a growl. And what of other predators? Not just wolves. Not just dogs. How far will you go? Will you tame the beasts of other worlds? Will you teach them loyalty, too? The human did not look away. His eyes locked with the professor's. If they choose to trust us, yes. The hall erupted. Voices crashed together. Fear, disbelief, excitement, outrage. Students shouted that it was madness. Others whispered that perhaps it was destiny. The sound shook the chamber like an earthquake. The professor roared for silence. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Do you not see, all of you? This is why humans are feared among the stars. They are not the strongest, yet they walk with strength. They are not the fastest, yet they chase with speed. They are not the fiercest, yet they command the fierce. What kind of species can do this? His eyes snapped back to the human, filled with fury and dread. You are not friends of predators. You are masters of them, and that makes you the most dangerous predators of all. The crowd hushed again, the words sinking deep. Some nodded slowly, fear clear in their faces. The human, still calm, finally smiled faintly. Maybe you are right. Maybe we are dangerous, but not because we command predators, because we love them, and because they love us back. The professor's jaw tightened. He spat the word like poison. Love. You speak of it as if it is power. The human nodded softly. It is power, the greatest power we have. The students murmured again, but the tone had changed. Some no longer mocked. Some no longer laughed. Some whispered of loyalty, of bonds, of things they had never seen on their own worlds. Seeds of wonder, planted by simple words. Kareth saw it. He saw the shift in his students. And it enraged him. His authority was slipping. His truth was cracking. And it was a human who broke it. He slammed the lectern once more, his voice a roar. No, it cannot be. Predators do not love. They do not trust. They do not choose. They are beasts. They are monsters. And humans who say otherwise are liars. But the human did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He only spoke, calm and steady. Then explained this, Professor. My dog knows my voice. He knows my scent. He knows my heartbeat. When I am afraid, he is afraid. When I am happy, he is happy. When I am gone, he waits for me. If that is not love, then tell me what it is. The words sank into the silence like stone into deep water. The professor opened his mouth, but no answer came. His throat worked, his claws clenched, but nothing came. For the first time, Professor Kareth, Master Predators, had no answer. The students saw it. They saw the hesitation, the doubt, and their fear shifted again. No longer feared the professor, but fear the human who stood before him with calm eyes and quiet strength. Karetha's voice, when it came, was low and unsteady. If this is true, then you are not just dangerous. You are a threat to every world. For what stops you from making even us your dogs? The hall gasped. The thought was terrifying. If humans could bond with predators, could they bond with other species too? Could they make aliens trust them, follow them, love them? The human smile returned, faint but sharp. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. Maybe, Professor, that choice is yours. The silence that followed was like a void. The students stared breathless. The professor's claws trembled on the lectern, and for the first time, fear of humans filled the hall, not because of their strength, not because of their weapons, but because of their hearts. The hall was silent, yet the silence was alive, thick, trembling, waiting to break. Every alien eye was fixed on the human, every ear straining to hear what he would say next. Professor Kareth stood at the front, his claws gripping the lectern, his bronze scales shifting with unease. His words still echoed in the air. What stops you from making even us your dogs? It was not just a question. It was a fear spoken aloud. The human stood in the center of the hall, calm as ever. His hands were folded loosely behind his back, his shoulders relaxed. He looked more like a teacher than a challenger, more like a storyteller than a warrior. And yet, every word he had spoken carried the weight of battle. He let the silence linger. He let the question hang. And only when the air itself felt heavy did he finally answer. That choice, the human said softly, is not mine. It is yours. Gasps filled the hall. The alien cadets shifted, their eyes wide. Some recoiled in fear. Others leaned forward in awe. For the human had not claimed power. He had not claimed control. He had given the choice to them. Professor Karetha's jaw tightened. His voice was sharp, but it trembled at the edges. Do you mean to say you could tame us if you wished? The human tilted his head, his calm smile faint but steady. Not tame, befriend. There is a difference. The professor hissed, his scales bristling. Friendship with predators is a lie. You twist words to hide your danger. You say friendship, but you mean domination. The human shook his head slowly. Domination is taking. Friendship is giving. My dog does not stay because I force him. He stays because he chooses to. And I stay with him for the same reason. The words rippled across the hall. Students whispered furiously, their voices clashing. Some shouted that the professor was right, that humans were deceivers. Others whispered that perhaps the humans spoke truth, that perhaps bonds were stronger than fear. Kareth slammed his claw on the lectern, the sound cracking like thunder. Dangerous words, dangerous lies. Do you not see what you are doing to these young minds, human? You poison them with dreams of impossible bonds. The human raised his eyes to meet the professor's, unflinching. Perhaps it is not poison. Perhaps it is hope. The hall stilled again, heavy with tension. Kareth's breath came sharp and fast, anger and fear battling inside him. His authority, his certainty, his very truth was crumbling. This human had not fought with claws or weapons. He had fought with stories, with proof, with calm conviction. And he was winning. The professor bared his teeth. If you can turn predators into family, then nothing will stop you from turning enemies into allies. Nothing will stop you from bending entire species to your will. You are not survivors. Human. You are conquerors in disguise. The students gasped, the word striking like a blade. Conquerors. The fear spread to the room again, cold and sharp. But the human did not falter. His voice remained steady, almost gentle. If I wished to conquer, Professor, I would not speak to you of friendship. I would not speak to you of trust. I would only bring war. But that is not why I am here. Then why are you here? Kareth spat. The human's eyes softened, but his voice carried a weight that silenced the hall. To remind you that strength is not always teeth and claws. Sometimes, strength is the bond that makes two hunters walk side by side instead of tearing each other apart. The hall fell silent. The students stared, their fear mixing now with something new, wonder. The professor's claws trembled on the lectern. His voice, when it came, was quieter, almost uncertain. And if we refuse, if we reject this bond you speak of, the human's calm smile returned. Then nothing changes. You live as you choose. But remember this, Professor. When the dark comes, when fear surrounds you, it is better to face it with a friend at your side than alone. The words were not shouted. They were not sharp, but they struck deep. The hall felt colder, quieter, as if the weight of truth had settled over it. The students stared at the human, their minds racing. Could it be true? Could predators, monsters of tooth and claw, truly be family? Could strength come from trust instead of fear? Professor Kareth's eyes burned with conflict. Anger, fear, doubt, all twisted together. He wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to crush the human with words. But no answer came. The silence stretched, heavy and unbroken. Finally, the professor spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. Tell me, human, if even predators choose to love you, what else will? The hall froze. The question was heavy, heavier than any before. It was no longer about dogs, no longer about predators. It was about the galaxy itself. The human did not answer immediately. He looked across the hall at the faces of alien students who watched him with fear and awe. Then he looked back at the professor. His calm smile lingered, but his voice was softer now, almost kind. Maybe that is something you should ask. Not me, but my dog. The words landed like thunder. The hall erupted in gasps, whispers, shouts. The implication was clear. The question was not about control or domination. It was about choice, about who would trust, who would stand beside humanity, who would share the bond. Kareth's claws slipped from the lectern. His hands trembled. For the first time, the master of predators felt small. The human turned, walking back to his seat with quiet steps. He did not shout. He did not gloat. He simply sat down, calm as ever. The students stared, their whispers rising like a storm. Some looked at the professor, waiting for him to strike back. But Kareth said nothing. He stood frozen, trapped in silence. The human's final words echoed in the chamber long after he had sat. "Ask my dog." It was not an answer. It was a challenge, a promise, a cliffhanger that none could resolve. The hall that had once been filled with certainty was now filled with questions. Questions about predators. Questions about humans. Questions about the very laws of nature. And somewhere in that silence, a seed was planted. A seed of fear, yes, but also of wonder. For if predators could be friends, what else was possible? The lecture was over, but the story had only begun.